This great nation will endure as it has endured, will revive and will prosper. So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed effort.
When I began brainstorming ideas for my senior project, I wanted it to be representative of my entire high school experience. While reflecting on my high school experience, it became very clear to me that the subject of history has had a large impact on my life. However, I never completed a true capstone project that represented all of the learning I have done during my time in high school. While searching around my house for inspiration for this project, I came across an old book of mine that treated the presidents like athletes and graded them based on traits such as brains, brawn, and morality. This served as the final catalyst in my decision, as in rereading the book, I rediscovered my interest in presidential leadership and in the office of the presidency as a whole. I have always had an interest in rankings for things such as movies, TV shows, songs, and books, so creating my own ranking of the presidents seemed to be a natural combination of two of my interests. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it was more difficult for me to find resources that I could use to further my knowledge on the presidents. Luckily, my father studied history in college and was able to point me to a few books that we had in the house that I could use to help me create my ranking. When deciding how to display my ranking, I elected to use Google Sites, as making my ranking into a website allowed it to be more easily reaccessible than if I made it into a Prezi or a PowerPoint slide presentation. Once I figured out what I was going to be doing as my project and became more informed in the subject, I then had to turn my attention to the methodology of the ranking. In order to make my ranking as objective as possible and to not be overwhelmed by the wealth of information I had taken in, I decided to focus on a few specific criteria. I chose to specifically focus on inherent leadership ability, any major legislation supported by the president or their lasting impacts, popularity, and the state of America before and after their presidency. My main points of focus were ensuring that factors outside of the president's control did not affect their ranking, and examining the full legacy of the president, hence why I chose not to include current President Donald Trump, as his legacy has not yet been fully defined. Once I completed the ranking, I decided to display each president on their own webpage with a fun fact, their ranking, and a short justification. For this presentation, I will be showing you the top 10 and bottom 10 presidents on my ranking, but the full ranking is available on the website. Coming in at number 34 and our 10th worst president is Zachary Taylor. Taylor only served for about a year and leaves behind little impact, but he was very popular as a general from the Mexican-American War and was attempting to keep the country united at the beginning of the slavery divide. At number 35 and our 9th worst president of all time, we have Chester A. Arthur. Arthur was a career politician who ingratiated himself well with the political machine in order to secure his vice presidential nomination. When James Garfield was assassinated, Arthur became president and turned his back on the political machines that had propped him up. However, he was unable to truly enforce the Pendleton Civil Service Act, never really held any true power, and was not reelected. At number 36 and our 8th worst president, we have John Tyler. Tyler was chosen as vice president essentially just to balance the ticket with William Henry Harrison. Once he became president, Tyler was the quintessential lame duck president, doing nothing during his terms and not being reelected, while being abandoned by his party. At number 37 and our 7th worst president, we have Richard Nixon. Nixon's most lasting legacy was his downfall, the Watergate scandal, which stands today as the benchmark for political corruption in America. Nixon was leading America to a time of prosperity, but his complete corruption overshadows any positive domestic policy. At number 38 and our sixth worst president, we have Franklin Pierce. Pierce was a weak president at a time when America desperately needed a strong one, and the public and his party realized this, as he was not even nominated to run again. Pierce's lasting legacy is the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which led to Bleeding Kansas, which many believe to be the first true shots of the Civil War. At number 39 and our fifth worst president, we have William Henry Harrison. Harrison only held the office for about a month, but leaves behind no true legacy, and this is where he ranks because of that. At number 40 and our fourth worst president, we have Warren G. Harding. Harding was elected by the greatest majority in American history, but his administration turned out to be the most corrupt in American history, and Harding died 2 years into his term, lacking a true major policy decision. At number 41 and our third worst president, we have James Buchanan. Buchanan was placed into one of the worst positions any president ever has. Buchanan failed to respond to these circumstances and thus shifted America towards civil war. At number 42 and our second worst president, we have Andrew Johnson. Johnson was only nominated as vice president due to his loyalty during the Civil War, and once Lincoln was assassinated, Johnson essentially weakened the entire power of the presidency and ceded much of his power to Congress. Johnson is one of the only presidents to be impeached and essentially failed at his job of reuniting the country in the wake of the Civil War. Number 43, and our worst president of all time, we have Millard Fillmore. Fillmore would be one of our most forgettable presidents of all time were it not for the fact that he supported the Fugitive Slave Act and the Compromise of 1850, two of the worst pieces of legislation in American history, and two pieces of legislation that ensured that we were on a march towards civil war. Transitioning to the best presidents of all time, at number 10 we have Ronald Reagan. Reagan formed a new conservative coalition and basically reformed the entire Republican Party. He also led America through a time of economic expansion. At number 9, we have James K. Polk. Polk was able to deliver on all four of his campaign promises so effectively that he retired after one term, having done all he desired. At number 8, we have Lyndon B. Johnson. Johnson was perhaps the most progressive civil rights president of all time, and his Great Society stands as one of the greatest what-ifs of all time, as without having to deal with the Vietnam War, Johnson might have put in place some of the most progressive domestic policies of all time. At number 7, we have John F. Kennedy. Kennedy was dealing with some of the most intense circumstances of the Cold War before his untimely death, and may have been one of the greatest presidents of all time due to his strong leadership. At number 6, we have Andrew Jackson. Though many remember him for his horrific treatment of the Native Americans, Jackson's legacy of expansion of suffrage makes him one of the most important presidents of all time. At number 5, we have Thomas Jefferson, who was very similar to Jackson in his desire to fight for the common man, and made one of the greatest policy decisions of all time with the Louisiana Purchase. At number 4, we have Teddy Roosevelt, who is best known for creating the EPA and his trust-busting attitude, making him a true revolutionary in the presidential sphere. At number 3, we have George Washington, a leader who united the country and whose actions set precedents that are still followed by modern presidents today. At number 2, we have Abraham Lincoln, who guided America through its most turbulent time and ended its most horrible practice in slavery. At number 1, we have Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who's a true hero of mine. FDR's greatest accomplishments include saving the American economy, fighting the Nazis, and being the only president to do it all while in a wheelchair. This project allowed me to explore my favorite topic in greater detail, and for that I am incredibly grateful. Thank you.